এতিয়া বোধহয় ভালকে আহিছে শব্দটো
হয় হয়
বাকি সব ঠিকে চলি আছে কলেজত
আছে
কলেজ
স্যার নমস্কাৰ
নমস্কাৰ ভালে আছে
হয় আছো স্যার ভালে আছে আপুনি
আছো ঠিকে আছে
স্যার লাস্ট 2017 ত লগ পাইছিল আপোনাক নগাঁও গাৰ্লছ কলেজ
হয় মই তালে আইআইটি থেকোতে আহিছিল
হয় স্যার
হয়
স্যার তেতিয়া আশা কৰিছিল আপোনাক আমি ইনভাইট কৰিম
হেৰি মানে এই যাব পৰা হলে বেছি ভাল হয়
বেছি ভাল আছিল হয় স্যার স্যার নেক্সট টাইম যেতিয়া অসমলৈ আহিব তেতিয়া আমি নিশ্চয় ইনভাইট কৰিম আপুনি আহিব
নিশ্চয়
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার
অৱশ্যে এই জুম বা গুগলত এইবিলাক ওয়েবিনাৰ বিলাক হোৱাৰ ফলত এটা ভালো হৈছে যে কানেকশনটো বেছি হৈছে যদিও ফিজিক্যালি যাব
হয় স্যার
এতিয়ালৈকে বোধহয় মই যোৱা বছৰৰ পৰা অসমত 50খন মান কৰিলো এনেকি ওয়েবিনাৰ
হয় স্যার আপোনাৰ লিষ্টত দেখিছো অসমৰ বিভিন্ন কলেজত আছে আপোনাৰ
বিভিন্ন কলেজত যোৱাবেলি বহুত কৰা হৈছে এই কোভিডৰ মাজত
হয় স্যার স্যার আমাৰ ছাৰৰ লগতো আগৰে চিনাকি আমাৰ প্ৰিন্সিপাল ছাৰ হয় স্যার
পুৰণি চিনাকি মানুহ
হয় মই প্ৰিন্সিপাল ছাৰৰ কথা পাতিছো প্ৰথমতে তেতিয়া আৰু আপোনাৰ কথা শুনি খুব ভাল পাইছে প্ৰিন্সিপাল ছাৰ স্যার বহুত দিনৰ মূৰত লগ পালে আপোনাৰ স্থানীয় ছাৰক
তাকে
কথা পাতি
হয় স্যার মোৰ নেটৱৰ্কটো অকমান দিগদাৰি কৰি আছিল সো অকমান লেট হৈ গল সৰি স্যার
নাই একো নাই
ঠিক আছে
মই অলপ দেৰিকে সোমাইছো
আপোনাৰ তাতো স্যার এটা মৰ্নিং
আমাৰ এই অনুষ্ঠানটোতো মানে ছাত্ৰ-ছাত্ৰীও থাকিব নহয় ছাত্ৰ-ছাত্ৰী আৰু বেলেগ
হয় মানে আমাৰ ফেকাল্টিও আছে স্কলাৰছও আছে লগতে আমাৰ কলেজৰ ষ্টুডেন্টস আছে
আৰু মানে বেলেগ ডিপাৰ্টমেন্টৰ থাকিব পাৰে
হয় স্যার স্যার আপোনাৰ তাতো এতিয়া মৰ্নিং নহয় জানো এতিয়া মৰ্নিং হৈ আছে
ৰাতিপুৱা আছে এতিয়া 9টা বাজিব আৰু শুনিবাৰে
স্যার গুড মৰ্নিং স্যার
গুড মৰ্নিং
ঠিক আছে ৰূপালী
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. 1 minute is remaining. Yes.
Yes.
Ni baki ase. ঠিক আছে আমি টাইমতে কৰো।
Wait কৰিলো। Participate
আমাৰ হয় কৰি আছে বহুতে। স্যার আপনি নেক্সট মানে কেতিয়া অসমলৈ আহিব বুলি ভাবিছে?
মই ডিসেম্বৰত যোৱা কথা আছে যদি মানে অন্য একো কোভিডৰ সমস্যা নহয় তেতিয়া হলে চাগে ডিসেম্বৰত যাম এমাহ মানৰ কাৰণে আমাৰ এতিয়া সেমিস্টাৰ চলি আছে কিন্তু সেমিস্টাৰ মানে আমাৰ এতিয়া এই সেমিস্টাৰটো নরমাল কে হৈছে মানে ক্লাছত যাব লগা হৈছে ল'ৰা ছোৱালীও আহিছে
হয় স্যার আমাৰ অসমতো দিছে আৰু এতিয়া অফলাইন ক্লাছবোৰ
কিন্তু
হয় 1 তাৰিখৰ পৰাই দিছে অক্টোবৰৰ আৰু তাৰ পিছত আফটাৰ পূজা স্কুল লেভেলত দিছে তেনেকুৱা সিচুৱেশনটো
ক্ষতি হৈছে মানে ল'ৰা ছোৱালী বিলাকৰ এই কলেজ স্কুল বন্ধ থকাৰ ফলত
হয় স্যার গোটেই ষ্টুডেন্টস কিনি মানে স্লো হৈ গল লাৰ্নিং কেপাসিটি
বহুত অসুবিধা আমাৰ তাতো আৰু অসুবিধা এতিয়া এইবিলাক দেখত টেকনলজিটো প্ৰায় সবৰে এক্সেস থকাৰ পিছতো ইয়াতে বহুত অসুবিধা হৈছে আমাৰ তাতো বহুতৰ এক্সেসটোই নাই নহয় টেকনলজি এটো এটা অসুবিধা
আচ্ছা
আমি স্টার্ট কৰিব পাৰো নেকি
স্যার স্টার্ট কৰিব পাৰো স্যাৰ
হ'ব
Okay. Good evening to all. Respected Principal Khagarijan College, Dr. Ramesh Nath sir, today's guest and honorable resource person, Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath sir from Sam Houston State University, Texas, USA, coordinator of this event, as well as HOD Economics, Khagarijan College, Umi Salma ma'am, coordinator IQAC of the college, Dr. Ramesh Kubi sir, Sri Balladev Sharma from Hodokhom Gramya Puthibharal Santha Nagaon, and all the participants, including faculty members, students, research scholars, and others. On behalf of the organizing committee, I, Rupali Talukder, take the privilege to welcome you all in our international webinar program. The theme of this webinar is Education, Employment, and Economic Policy. And the initiative to organize this webinar is taken by the Department of Economics, Khagarijan College, in association with the IQAC of the college and in collaboration with Hodokhom Gramya Puthibharal Santha Nagaon, Assam. And for this webinar, we have invited Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath from Sam Houston State University, Texas, USA. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time for this webinar. We are really fortunate to have you as our resource person for this webinar, sir. I welcome you. Now, according to agenda, we have the inaugural speech from our principal. So, I would like to request Principal Khagarijan College, Dr. Ramesh Nath sir, to deliver the inaugural speech. Over to Ramesh Nath sir.
Thank you, Rupali.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You are audible.
Yes. Good evening and good morning to our Hiranya Nath sir. I heartily welcome Honorable Resource Person Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath, Honorable Professor Sam Houston State University, Texas, United States of America. Respected participants, today's webinar coordinator Professor Umesh Salma, Head of the Department of Economics, Dr. Rameswar Kurmi, Coordinator IQAC. Today's webinar moderator Rupali Talukder, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Khagarijan College, and members of Sadau Gramya Puthibharal, as well as the chairman of the Sadau Gramya Puthibharal, Balladev Sharma sir. I, on behalf of Khagarijan College, I welcome all of you. Khagarijan College is one of the premier institutes of Nagaon, established in 1972. It is located in Nagaon town. It is 1 kilometer away from the Nagaon Circuit House. Actually, Khagarijan, the old name of Nagaon. The college is presently 2 streams, that is arts and commerce. We don't have science stream. Besides it, we have BCA, PGDCA, and postgraduate courses and vocational courses under Guwahati University. Today, I would like to share some few points regarding today's webinar, Education, Employment, and Economic Policy. Because I have to speak very less because our honorable speaker is present and he will deliver, and we have to learn a lot of things from him. Human development is considered to be the ultimate objective of development, with economic growth as means to achieve it. Development stands to be justified when it is equipped with good employment opportunities. Employment provides the means for meeting the income and subsistence needs of individuals and their families, which fulfill the goal of overall and equitable development. Employment level would rise when there is sufficient and efficient human capital. The human capital is main thing. Today's main topic, we have to substantiate, correlate the education the quantity of schooling, the percentage of population that completed primary, secondary, tertiary, as a whole, it is the collective process, I think, which is probably lack of our, not only Assam, as well as our Indian context. There is no any correlation between primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. Because we have to focus on human capital as a driver of economic growth for developing countries has led to undue attention on school attainment. Developing countries have made considerable progress in closing the gap to developed countries in terms of school attainment, but research has underscored the importance of cognitive skills for economic growth. The results shift attention to issues of school quality, where developing countries have been much less successful in closing the gaps. Without improving school quality, developing countries will find it difficult to improve their long-run economic performance. It is seen that our Indian context, now 2020, new education policy is coming on. Lot of hurdles, lot of tremendous challenges will be faced. We have to face in our academic arena. There will be, I think, in education scenario, lots of crises have been seen, and which are facing not only our students as well as our economic policies, because we like
And I would like to request coordinator of this event as well as HOD Economics Khagarijan College, Umi Salma ma'am, to give a brief introduction of our resource person, Professor Natsa. Over to you, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Respected resource person of today's webinar, Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath sir, respected principal sir, my colleagues, academicians, and faculties of different institutions, scholars, and other professionals, my dear students and all other participants, very, very good evening to all of you. The topic of today's webinar situation does not need pages of introduction, for he is one of the brightest stars in his field and his actions speak of his merit, which is why I take this opportunity to draw the attention of all the participants to a small overview of his work. Hiranya Kumar Nath is a professor of economics at Sam Houston State University, Huntsville, Texas, USA. He is also an adjunct professor at Tezpur University, Assam, and an academic editor for economics at PLOS ONE. Professor Nath held visiting positions at the Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, India, and the Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, Australia. He also taught at St. Andrews University in Osaka, Japan, and China University of Mining and Technology in Beijing, China. Professor Nath's research interests include macro and monetary economics, information economy, and various issues related to developing and transition economies. Dr. Nath has published in highly regarded peer-reviewed journals like Applied Economics, California Management Review, Comparative Economic Studies, Contemporary Economic Policy, Economic Analysis and Policy, Economic Record, Empirical Economics, Information Economics and Policy, Journal of International Trade and Economic Development, Journal of Macroeconomics, Journal of Money, Credit and Banking, Review of Development Economics, and Telecommunications Policy. He earned his PhD in economics from Southern Methodist University, Dallas, USA. Professor Nath attended the University of Delhi for his bachelor's and master's level education in economics. He also earned an MPhil degree in economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He has traveled extensively throughout the world, visiting universities, presenting his research, and teaching students. Professor Nath was born in Nagaon, a village near Mangalore, and was raised mostly in Thelamara, Sonitpur district. He attended Thelamara High School and Cotton College before joining Sri Ram College of Commerce for his undergraduate education in economics. He established the Assam Scholarship at Sam Houston State University to create awareness about Assam. He works with rural communities in Assam to create an enabling environment for individual as well as collective peace and prosperity through Good Neighbor Initiative. He is also founding member of the web portal 15minuteshikha.com that regularly uploads short lectures and organizes interactive sessions on core concepts from various disciplines by leading experts primarily for college students in Assam. This is a matter of great fortune that Professor Nath has agreed to give us his valuable time, and I hope that everyone present here will be much benefited from his words and knowledge. Without much ado, I conclude with heartfelt gratitude towards Nath sir and thank him for his participation. Thank you all. Thank you very much. So now the session is over to Rupali. Okay, Rupali, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, it's the time to move to our technical session. So I would like to hand over the session to our resource person, Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath sir, to deliver his keynote address. Over to Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath sir. Sir, the session is yours now.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. I would like to thank Khagarijan College for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. Principal Sir, Dr. Nath, Head of the Department, Economics, Mrs. Salma, Ms. Talukdar, Sadau Asom Gramya Puthibharal Santha, IQAC, Khagarijan College. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you for giving me this opportunity. I also like to thank all the participants. So today's talk, I will be talking about education, employment, and economic policy. So I will not, given the diverse background of the participants, I will not focus on economic theory or more technical stuff. Rather, it will be a very general talk. Of course, I will bring in insights from economics because in economics, education, employment, and economic policy, these are all very important topics. So my deliberation today, my discussion today will be very general. And before I start my lecture, let me say something about myself. I'm trained to be a macroeconomist, meaning I study things from a very broad perspective. And therefore, whenever I discuss a topic, I try to think it through that prism where I take a look at the society, or I take a look at the country, or I take a look at the economy from a very broad perspective. So I just don't focus on one particular sector or one particular industry. Rather, I try to look at economy as a whole. And therefore, I hope you pay attention to that. And one thing I am going to focus in my lecture is that there are some discrepancies in terms of the relationship between education, employment, and economic policy, particularly in our country, in India and in Assam. And I will try to highlight that. And I think that is very important because we have an education system. Of course, we are the product of that education system. Of course, after getting an education, you get an employment. Many of us get an employment. And of course, we know that our government has economic policies. But sometimes they are not, sometimes meaning most of the time, they are not in good coordination. And that's the point that I'm going to highlight in my deliberation. So what is the role of education in our economic life? So Dr. Nath already has highlighted how education is very important for economic growth. Now here the basic point is education basically help us acquire some knowledge and skills. And these knowledge and skills are known as human capital. And human capital is very important for our productive life, for our economic life. So in economic theory, we say that if a country has higher human capital, that country will also have higher productivity. That means if the workers, if the people who participate in the labor market, if they have higher human capital, they will be more productive. That means they will be able to produce more. And when I say produce more, I am talking about both goods and services. Goods are those tangible stuff, like, for example, if you cook a meal, that meal itself is a good, right? Or if you produce vegetables, that is a good, right? So service is when I teach. Teaching, I actually create a service, which is education. If I'm a doctor, if I am treating a patient, that is healthcare, right? Healthcare is a service. So we produce both goods and services. So if a country has more educated people, that means if a country has more human capital, then the amount of goods and services we can produce will be higher. And if that is higher, then of course, our standard of living will be higher. That means we'll have a better material life. Of course, education also have one aspect which goes beyond our material physical life, right? But I will not, as an economist, I will not focus that much on that. Well, I recognize that that's an important part because through education, we can also inculcate some values which is conducive or which is very essential for the smooth running of the human society. So I recognize that, but my focus will be on the economic contribution of education. So I will be talking about our economic life. So economics, so education is no doubt is an important aspect of the process of development. So through education, we can build the human capital, which is important for productivity, and productivity is important for our standard of living, which essentially talks about the overall development of the society. Now, if you think about education in terms of creating human capital or developing human capital, what essentially education does? Of course, we know that there are 3 different levels of education, at least the way the system has been built, right? Primary, secondary, and tertiary. So these are the 3 different levels of education. So up to the secondary level, the kind of skills that we try to build through education are literacy skills. For example, a student who has finished his high school meaning I'm talking about up to 12, that student should be able to read, should be able to write, should be able to speak, and should also have basic numeracy, simple math, or simple science education. So those are the skills that we try to build through education up to the secondary level. So now, if you think about, do we actually do that? We don't have 100% literacy in India, but then if you look at those who get education up to the secondary level, let's say in India, does everyone who has completed education up to the higher secondary level, can they write well? Can they read well? Can they speak well? Can they do the simple math well? So let us ask that questions, because that is very important. The post-secondary education will depend on, or success in post-secondary education, college level education, or university level education will depend on whether you have acquired those skills well or not, right? And if you look at various surveys done by some non-governmental organization, some international organization, the information that we get or from those surveys is not very encouraging, in the sense that, yes, we have primary and secondary level education, but it has not done what we should be doing, or what the student after finishing the secondary level education should acquire. So there are deficiencies in our education system. So let's kind of recognize that. And then when you get to the tertiary level education, college and above, there are, in addition, so we are building on those skills, and those skills are important to live a productive life. Those skills are important for your economic life as well, and particularly in the 21st century. In the tertiary sector, so when you get to the college, so in addition to these skills that you are supposed to acquire when you are in schools, you also have to learn how to think. So I always keep saying to my students that as a teacher, I try to teach you how to think, not what to think, right? So how to think is an important part of this learning process, and that contributes to building human capital, right? So this, how you think, that is an important component, or that is an important skill that you learn from tertiary level education. Then also you develop subject-specific knowledge and skills, right? So somebody is majoring in physics, somebody is majoring in economics, somebody is majoring in mathematics, somebody is majoring in English literature, somebody is majoring in Assamese literature. So you, through that college level or university level education, you develop your knowledge or your skills about a specific subject. At the same time, you also learn how to think, because that is very important for your workplace. That is important for the society as well. Now, we have many colleges, more than 40,000 colleges in India, and about 1,500 universities in India, both private and public. which given outside the size of India's population is actually not much. I mean, we need more higher education institutions. The median is of Indian population is about 30. That means half of our population, which is a very big number, right? That about 65 crore. That 65 crore people are under the age of 30, meaning we need a lot of educational institution to educate our young population. And again, we need to recognize that human being, that this population is our one of the, I think, most potent resources. If you think about what is our resources, what is our comparative advantage as a country in India, then I would say it's the human resource, right? I'm not talking about human capital. I'm talking about human resource. We have got so much young people, and that should be our strength, and that we should be able to, through our policy, economic policy, we should be able to exploit that human resources, the potential of that human resources. Now, we don't have enough educational institution to educate this young population. There are several problems or challenges why we don't have that many higher education institutions. Of course, in last 20 years, there has been a huge growth of those institutions, but at the same time, it has been difficult. It has been challenging because we don't have a large or sufficient supply of the people who can actually teach this young population. So there is a supply problem there, right? So now, talking about this tertiary education or talking about this higher education, college and university level education. So now let us ask this question. So have we been able to, like whatever institutions we have in the country or in our state of Assam, like have we been able to educate them or help the students acquire the knowledge, the subject-specific knowledge? Secondly, have we been able to inculcate in them this ability to think, right? So that is the question. In other words, have we prepared the students for the 21st century labor market or the job market? So that's the question, right? And again, I recognize that there are problems even at the institution level. For example, I often hear that the faculty members, they are overburdened because there is not enough faculty, right? And that could be a problem. And again, that goes back to my earlier comment about how there is a shortage of supply of qualified people to teach at the college and university level. So those are kind of the problems. Those are the educational system. And then there is, so kind of refocusing our attention to, let's say, employment. So if you look at the employment, right? So the labor market, this is, we use the term labor market or the job market, right? So even now, about 43% of India's workforce is engaged in agriculture, right? And then about 25%, and these are kind of rough number, 25% in the secondary sector, which is essentially manufacturing, and then about 32% in the service sector, right? So that's kind of, and then there are variations across different states, right? Now, of course, these jobs which are available in the economy, they require different levels of skills. They require different kinds of knowledge. Now, the question is there a connection, strong connection between our education system and the labor market? In other words, are we preparing the students for the labor market, the existing labor market in India? There are a couple of things that I will have to point out. And again, I will take you back to our individual experiences, to our anecdotes, right? So think about how you chose your education. So whether you want to do science, whether you want to do arts, whether you want to go for engineering, whether you want to go for a medical profession. So how do you basically pick? How do you choose? So most of the time what happens is it's not a system where we chose it based on information available. It is most of the time, for the students, it is their parents or it's their society which push them to do something which they may not be interested in. And that, I think, is a problem. Even when I grew up as a kid in a rural area in Assam, I saw that firsthand. Did not happen with me. I think I was lucky in a way because my parents never said what I need to study or what I should be interested in. But if you think about most parents, and this is a very pertinent question, because I will come what is the implications of this type of social system or this type of social practices, right? So most students, at least when I grew up, they were told that if you are good in your secondary education, in your school level education, if you get a first division, if you have a letter marks in mathematics or in science, then you should go for engineering. You go for the science stream, and then you should do engineering or medical profession, right? And again, that person might not be very interested in science. That person might be interested in history or maybe interested in literature. But we as a society never encourage people or the bright students to do social science or liberal arts or humanities, right? We always push them to do science. There's nothing wrong with that. We need a lot of scientists. And that was probably the original vision. So when India got independence, what was the policy? We created all these world-class institutions like IITs, right? Or in Indian Institute of Science, to create scientists and to create engineers. Because at that time, we needed those skilled people, right? But then that also had a flaw. And to my mind, the flaw is it sent a very wrong signal to the society. What is the signal? That people started thinking that if our kids do engineering or science, then they're somebody, otherwise they're nobody, right? And that, I think, is the kind of wrong signal that was sent to the people, the population, right? Of course, there are other considerations why parents will push their kids to go for engineering and medical, because that's where you make more money. That is a secondary consideration. But I think in the beginning, when we decided that we will build this institution, a higher education institution, very specialized higher education institution for science and technology, it also sent a very wrong signal. So I just want you to think that way, because I mean, think about it. So why there was no Indian Institute of Social Science or Indian Institute of Liberal Arts? Certain institutions were developed by private sector. For example, there was Tata Institute of Social Science, but there was no at government initiative, there was no Indian Institute of Social Science, for example. Later on in late 60s, well, the government created places like Jawaharlal Nehru University, which is essentially more focused on social science and liberal arts. But if you think about it, technology, science, they're important. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they're not important. They're very important. We need more scientists. We need more engineers. We need more doctors, given the size of our population, given the size of our... But at the same time, we also need good social scientists. We need good people who do literature, who do history, right? And that was somehow not patronized in a way that science and engineering were patronized. What is the relevance of the social scientists? Now, if you think about the social discourses and discussions, right? So people come and talk about society, talk about politics, talk about economics on TV, they write in the newspapers. So they are, and those are important discourses. In a democratic society, social discourses are important. But I mean, to have good quality discourses and discussion which will contribute to the overall development of the society, you need good people, right? So therefore, you need to encourage students to do social science, to do literature, or to do liberal arts, right? So that, I think, was in terms of policy, and I'm not talking about exactly economic policy, overall social policy. Yeah, I think that is something that I can see as a person who observes society. And again, in my case, as I said, although both my parents never went or never got a college education, but they are in a way very open. I was very good at mathematics. I was very good at science. In fact, I got highest mark in mathematics when I did my class 10, and that was way back in 1985. And in both maths, I got almost full marks. So I could have easily gone to, and I liked mathematics, I could have gone to science. But at that point, my thinking was that I want to study arts, or I want to study social science. And my parents, again, I was lucky that I was not forced to do science. Rather, I went and I did social science. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen with some other students or some of my even classmates. Now, what is the outcome? Well, they probably successfully go through the process. They do science in higher secondary, then they go to engineering colleges, they go to medical colleges, then they are hired or they are employed as engineers or as doctors. But then they probably are not interested in doing what they are trained to do, right? And as a result, I think there are a couple of costs to the society. One is they were trained to be engineers, but they are not interested in engineering, right? So the skills that they acquire, the knowledge that they acquire, they will not apply to the best of their ability, right? So it's something that is forced upon them, right? So as a result, you will hear that somebody has again, I'm not kind of pinpointing a particular person, but it happens a lot in our society. So you will see that an engineer who was a trained engineer is now doing something in literature, writing poems or spending more time kind of on literature, or spending more time on something else, which was he was not trained for. Of course, this is a bright person, so he is capable of doing a lot of stuff maybe, but then his original training was engineering, right? So we need good engineers so that we have good roads, right? So we need engineers so that we can control, we can have effective flood control, right? So those are our problems, engineering problems, right? So I think because of this mismatch, because these are the people who did not want to become engineers, so they did not want to become doctors, and they become, and as a result, they are not giving their best, right? As a result, society suffers. And I am saying that because I have lived in the United States for the last 25 years, and I have seen things here. So here in the United States, or for that matter, any developed countries, a student will go to engineering only if that student is very much interested in engineering. As a result, after his education, when he becomes engineer, so he will be innovative, he will solve problems, he will be really a good engineer who is contributing to the economy, contributing to the society. So he will not spend time, because at the end of the day, I mean, we all economists know that we all economists know that our time is limited, right? So we have only 24 hours a day. So to do a good job, we have to spend quite a bit of our time to the things that we do. So I am a college teacher, I'm a university teacher. So if I, instead of teaching or spending time preparing my lecture, doing my research, if I spend my time on something else, of course, my teaching will suffer, my students will suffer, right? My research will suffer, right? That means I am not contributing to the area or to the economy the best way I can do, because I'm trained to be a college professor, I'm trained to be an economist. So if I'm not doing this, if I'm spending a significant amount of time doing something else, right? So then I am not actually doing the right thing, right? So that is, I think, one of the problems, right? So one of the problems. So as a result, in the society, you will see a lot of mismatch, which doesn't happen in a developed country. This is one of the very fundamental difference. So you will find less people in this country, in the United States, who are doing something which they are not interested in. And as a result, like, because that is this mismatch is very, very pervasive in our society, we have other issues, other problems, right? That's why we have to make sure, or we have to closely monitor that a teacher is coming to the school at 9 o'clock, because that person never wanted to be a teacher, right? So we forcefully made him teacher, right? Or that person, we have to closely monitor a doctor, that he comes to the hospital at times, right? In his scheduled time, because he never wanted to be a doctor. So if you do whatever you want to, you don't have to be told that you have to come to the hospital and treat people at 9 o'clock, right? So if you think it through, now you might think, why that the doctors, they don't come on time to the hospital? Or why the engineers, they don't come to work on time? Or why the teachers, they don't come to school why, again, the government has to make rules, and they have to set up a system where you have to take picture, or you have to put camera so that the teacher comes at time. Why? I mean, why? So if you ask that question, one of the fundamental problem is that there is a big mismatch, right? The people who don't want to be teacher, they somehow are made teachers, right? And that is a systemic problem. Again, as I said, I'm a macroeconomist, so I look at as a whole. So there's a systemic problem. And that has to do with economic policy, because we don't have why that is a problem, why a person who doesn't want to be a teacher becomes a teacher. Because, again, our economy is not robust. So think about the economy of Assam, right? Now, this year we had a new government. They announced in the very beginning that in order to solve, or in order to kind of handle the unemployment problem, we at the government sector create jobs. What are the jobs they are going to create? Teachers, police, and maybe some other administrative jobs, right? And then of course, the students who want to be a teacher, they will write the TET exam, and then they will become teacher, right? So they will probably get. But then, if you really go and have a one-on-one talk with these people who become teacher and ask them, are you really interested in teaching? I am sure 50 to 60% students, or 50% of those, let them be honest, right? So they will say that they didn't want to be teacher, right? As a result, you have recruited teachers who are hardly interested in teaching. So obviously, in such a system, you will not get good teachers because they are doing it as a job. They are not doing it out of their passion for teaching. And that doesn't happen in a economy, robust economy like the United States or some other, there are a lot of other economies. I'm talking about the US because I live here, okay? So for example, I teach here at the university. Nobody monitors when I go, when I come, when I do my work, because they know that I will do, because I'm passionate about teaching. I have come to this profession not because there's no other jobs, right? I came here, I came to teach because that's my passion. And as a result, there's no monitoring. In fact, I taught at IIT Guwahati. So I was quite surprised in a institute like Indian Institute of Technology, which is top notch. It's a world-class institutions, right? They are, in fact, it was closely, although I was employed there only for 1 year, I was closely monitored. Like if I have to leave to go and talk or something in some college or universities, I have to actually fill out a form. And again, when I come back, I have to fill out another form. That means I am being monitored. But why? I am passionate about teaching. I will do it anyway, right? So why I have to be monitored? That also says that even in institutions like IIT, there are people who have become teachers because they did not, because there is nothing else for them. And so they became teachers. So there is a possibility that they will, whenever they get a chance, they will not do what they are supposed to do, right? And that, again, that doesn't happen in a country where the economy is very robust. Robust meaning you have all kinds of opportunities. So if you think about Assam's economy, well, agriculture is still the largest employer, where people are generally not really employed, they are underemployed, right? So they don't spend 40 hours a week in agricultural activities. I'm not talking about all, but half of the people who will be classified as agricultural laborer or agricultural cultivators or farmers, I think they spend, if you think that 40 hours a week is the normal work hour, I don't think they spend 40 hours. Some of them are very kind of hardworking. They do it very well. I am not talking about that. But half of the people probably are underemployed in the sense that they spend probably only 10 hours or 5 hours a week in agricultural activities, right? Then, well, there is hardly any manufacturing in Assam. And then when we talk about service, these are mostly government services, public services, right? So government offices, and most of you know like how the government offices are run, right? So you go to a government office at 10 o'clock, you probably will not find half of the people. And then you will have to basically rely on all kinds of very unnecessary system like visits by a minister with the media, blah, blah, blah. So those are, again, is a reflection of this huge mismatch, right? Between what we want and what is available and what society pushes us to do. So that's a very sad state of affair, right? So that's a very sad state of affair. And until and unless we can build a system where you can do whatever you want to do or whatever you are passionate for, I think it will be very difficult to kind of integrate these three things together. And again, I was talking about the kind of skills that are developed through education, meaning the human capital that is built by the education system, right? I was asking the question, do we basically prepare students for the job market, for the labor market? And there again, I think there's so much deficiencies, right? And why is that deficiency? Why students doesn't know how to think even after they get a college education? So, or why they are not up to date on the subject specific knowledge. For example, a student, let's say he has completed his undergraduate degree, BA or BSc in economics. So that person should become a lifelong learner in the sense that whatever comes all throughout his life, he will follow or she will follow the economics information or knowledge, right? So even if he doesn't or she doesn't pursue any further education, but this subject specific knowledge, what is going on in Assam's economy, what is going on in Indian economy, that person will probably, you would expect that that person will follow that knowledge, that information, and that will keep that updated. But in reality, what I have seen, and since I kind of keep going back to Assam quite often, I get to talk to a lot of people, they are not very up to date. A college educated person, you would expect that that person would be prepared enough to read a government document, a policy document, and figure out what to do, what not to do. For example, there are a lot of good government policies. I'm not saying that all policies are bad, some good policies, from which a lot of people can benefit. There are good policies for people who are below the poverty line. There are policies nowadays, there are good policies for, or good schemes for healthcare, for example, right? And if there is a college educated person in a village, for example, that person should be able to read those policies and schemes and should be able to tell all the people in the village, in his neighborhood, what this policy is all about and how they can benefit from there. It is not just government's responsibility, right? So it should go both ways. Because if you think that it is government's responsibility to kind of implement these schemes and to create awareness about the government policies, there could be a loophole. And that's where a lot of corruption takes place, right? So when you refuse to read a government document, instead you rely on a government official or in a government employee, right? That's where they get the opportunity to be corrupt, right? So he or she will explain to you the policy in such a way that he has got opportunity to take bribes or to do something, right? But then a college-educated person, I believe, that should be able to read the government policy. So there is some policy document somewhere, right? So why cannot you read it, understand it, and also let the other people know in the society? That will make it a better society, right? But then again, you tell me whether it is the system, it is a failure of the system, or whether it is a failure on the part of individuals, right? So somehow from our education system, from our educational programs, the students do not get, I'm talking about average students, I'm not talking about students, probably there are exceptions, but then for most students, why they do not get this idea, or why they do not think that it should be their duty, or it should be, they are capable of doing that, right? So this is very small example, but this is true. Most of the college-educated students, they are not, sometimes they don't know how to write an application, all right, with all the information and submit it to the government, or how to do certain things which involves the government bureaucracy. And this gap has created an opportunity for government officials to be corrupt, right? And also it goes beyond that, right? So so the way education should enrich our society has not happened. education, again, it should create employable skills. And the fact that these students, they don't acquire those skills, and that also is one of the reasons why they fail, or why they are not successful in getting some of those all India types of all India jobs, right? All India level jobs. And they may not be like IAS or IPS. I'm talking about even the other types of job, whether it is in banks, whether it is in railways, or whether it is in Oil India, or whether it is in Coal India. And in Assam, the situation is even worse, because we always try to tell the government or the organization that you should hire our students because you are operating in the state of Assam. But at the same time, we should be aware, do we actually have, or created through our system, we have created quality candidates? And I doubt very much. And I am not saying it kind of from thin air, but I'm talking out of my experience with some of the students that I have met in Assam, right? So, and now I'm not blaming anyone. So, because these are all interconnected, and it is very difficult to kind of figure out a causal connection, because, right? So the fact that some of our Jatiyo Anusthan, those civil society organizations, right? They are in a way creating this environment. Oh, okay, so you cannot be touched, right? So, and that kind of creates a sense of complacency even among the students, I believe, right? Oh, don't worry. So if we are denied or we are not successful, we'll be helped by this civil society organization, because they will go for the locals, or they will have to employ for, well, and then kind of the civil society organizations or the media, they also don't, I think, they don't operate in good faith, or they don't operate in honestly, right? So they try to build stories around this kind of happenings, I guess. So again, the other problem, which I kind of keep saying in the context of particularly in Assam, is that when you talk about higher education, college or university level education, and again, whenever I get to meet people, some people always ask me, so why our students don't do well in all India level competitive exam? And my answer is because they are not used to a competitive environment. If you are pampered, right, by this kind of rhetoric, this kind of narrative, where, okay, everything that happens in Assam has to be reserved for the people from Assam, then obviously we are not really helping to create a competitive environment. And I keep saying that our educational institution, higher educational institutions, universities particularly, they should be open to students and faculty from other parts of the country. Because not everybody can go to Delhi, not everybody can go to Bangalore, not everybody can go to Hyderabad, right? So most of our students, they stay in Assam. And if you are expecting that the students should get a competitive environment where they can be successful, right? Then obviously, how do you create a competitive environment? Again, in terms of our policy, in terms of our social thinking, we always get it wrong. We always think that, okay, so if we kind of let some organization open a coaching center, or somebody starts a business of coaching for the bank PO exams or railway exams or for UPSC exams, then that is how we create competitive advantage. I say no. It is not how you create a competitive environment, right? So you create a competitive environment by exposing students to competition. Well, if you let a organization open a coaching center through which they will, students will get an opportunity to prepare for UPSC or prepare for bank PO exams, right? Then, well, they probably will, some of the students will be successful because they basically will tell you what exactly you have to study. But that is not through a sense of competition that comes from inside, right? That will come when you see competition in your classroom. That will come when you see competition in your institutions, right? Why the same students who grew up in Assam, when they go to Delhi, why they flourish, they do well? Because they get to meet students from Bihar, students from Andhra Pradesh, students from Tamil Nadu, students from Karnataka, students from Bengal, and then they see how they prepare for those exams or prepare for things in general. And that competitive environment helps them compete and be successful. But again, as I said, not everybody can go to Delhi, not everybody can go to Bangalore. So if we want to create an environment in Assam, and then obviously we'll have to bring students, we'll let people come and then do study in Guwahati University, in Dibrugarh University, in the all the universities that we have created in last few years, right? So that will create a competitive. And if you look at all the institutions in Assam, then why IIT stands out, or to some extent Tezpur University stands out? Because there are students from outside the state. There are faculty from outside the state. We produce students in Guwahati University and we employ them in Guwahati University. That is not very conducive to the higher education of the state, right? At the local level, what is happening? Let's say the colleges, right? Even at the colleges, now there are so much political pressure. So I'm talking about these organizations which basically create these pressures, right? So that you have to admit the local students. Why cannot you bring students from Karimganj? Why cannot you bring in students from Hodia? Why cannot you bring, I'm talking about, let's say, a college like Khagarijan College or Mongoldoy College or Sipazar College, right? Why cannot we bring more students from, let's say, Dhuburi or from Hailakandi or from, so when they come, why Cotton College used to be such a successful college or a good college? Because students from all over Assam and all over Northeast used to come. And that creates an environment where the student has the opportunity to grow, right? So those are small things, but we do not see the big picture. And as a result, our society as a whole suffers, right? So even when in our political interactions with our representative, it is all about like local problems. As a result, what happens is, of course, the resources are limited. So we don't see the big picture. And since we don't see the big picture, the overall, the country, the state, they suffer, right? So those are some of the things which are kind of related to education and employment, also economic policy, right? Our economic policies, these economic policies are not well thought out policies, right? Let me give you now some of the examples. And this is an example, I love it and I keep giving it, I have written about it, right? So if you think about Guwahati, and again, Guwahati, I'm taking as an example, but then you can also think about other parts of Assam. Again, my discussion from now on will be focused on Assam. So Guwahati, like if you look at the area around the Horaighat Bridge, we have Guwahati University, the first university in the entire Northeast, right? We have Assam Engineering College. We have IIIT, we have IIT. Now there will be an AIMS. Then there are other education Khagarijan on that institute, and the Mirja Institute of Technology is also not very far. Then Ayurvedic College. So there are so many educational institutions. So, and these are all higher education institutions, right? Now, these higher education institutions produce highly qualified people who have very high human capital. So do you think that people who have a master's degree or who have an engineering degree will go and work in those factories, which are in last 10, 15 years have been built in last 10, 15 years in North Guwahati? Do you think that they are trained to work in those factories? No. Most of our engineering graduates, they go out of the state. So we produce, but then we cannot keep them, right? Because we have a very flawed economic policy, right? Now the government, the previous government, they announced that they will be like industrial zone or industrial area from Mirja to Rungya. Why? Mainly talking about they are talking about industrial zone, meaning these are manufacturing industries, right? So I don't understand why, right? Because if you look at, forget about in United States, think about China, what China is doing. China has moved all their industrial base out of cities, okay? So if you go to Beijing, Beijing is one of the most polluted cities in the world. I went to Beijing in 2007, just before their Olympics. And back then, they were kind of moving out all their factories out of Beijing. And they sent those factories like 400, 500 miles away from Beijing. And then what they did in last 15 years, they have built high-speed railways, because you know that urban areas, right? So urban areas, or people who live in urban areas, because of the amenities, they like to live in urban areas, right? So you cannot prevent people from living in urban areas. So they live in urban areas, but then they work in factories, which is like 400 miles or 200 miles away from the city. So they introduce high-speed rail. So it goes in the morning, right? Takes 1 hour to get there. These are bullet trains. And then they work. In the evening, they come back home. It reduces pollution. It reduces congestion, right? But then why we are building those factories in North Guwahati, just right outside IIT's cement factory, right? And then we are creating all those big warehouses where you get all those 24, 26-wheeler big trucks, which basically always create congestion on now these are well-built roads now, right? But then because of that traffic, they're always congested. Not only that, the road condition deteriorates very quickly. So why do you need that, right? And that is where the first comment that I made, there is no coordination, right? So if you have this educational institution, instead of building those cement factories or whatever factories we have in North Guwahati, again, this is an example. You can think about, Jorhat, think about Nagaon, think about other parts of the state as well, right? So instead of that, if we create service industries which are less polluting, right? If we create those service industries, let's say North Guwahati, like we create healthcare industry, right? Healthcare industry meaning hospitals. Let's create creative industries where our students, young kids from Assam, actually they're very creative, right? So why don't we, and then nowadays, if you closely observe, you will see that there are many creative industries like Bollywood movies, right? If you see a new Bollywood movie, you will see a lot of people who work in those movies. They're probably not the actors or not the actress, but in the music or animation or editing, cinematography, you will find people, or you find those young kids from Assam. They work, they go to Bombay, and then they work there, and they are making their career out of it, right? Why cannot we do that? Because to be an animator or to be a cinematographer, you don't have to live in Mumbai. And Mumbai is very expensive. Probably that person is living in Mumbai in a very small, tiny apartment, which he is paying a fortune, right? And not eating the food that he or she likes, right? But then whatever he or she does in Mumbai, he could have done from Guwahati, right? Because you have to create that. And as long as you have high-speed internet, you can send it to wherever it is. It could be Bollywood, Hollywood, or it could be somewhere in Europe, right? So what you need a space, you need high-speed internet, you need 24 hours electricity, and then you can do it in a very scenic environment of North Guwahati. It is beautiful, right? And then you don't have to destroy those hills. Every time I go back, I am very sad that those hills are being destroyed, right? So if it were United States, I can guarantee that even to build buildings there, they would not have destroyed those hills. They would have kept it the way it is, and then they would have built it very aesthetically so that it doesn't destroy the nature at all. So we need that vision, right? So if there were a lot of creative industries, if there were a lot of healthcare industries, educational institutions, then all the students who graduate from or who get an education from Guwahati University, IIT, Triple IIT, Assam Engineering College, they could have been employed right there. And that would have a positive externality for the society. For the vibrancy of the society in Assam, we need a very good, very, very active middle class. But that middle class is not now going out of the state because there is no employment opportunities. They are all going to the south or going to the north, to Delhi, right? We could have kept them there. And then once that is built, of course, it also creates a lot of ancillary industries in order to serve those service industries, right? There will be, you need markets, you need good eating places, you need schools. So as you can see, even at the lower level, even at the manufacturing level, you can create other industries to support that focused industries, right? So if you have, for example, a good healthcare, and Assam could be a very good hub of healthcare. So right now, India earns about $9 billion from medical tourism. That means people from outside the country, they come to India for medical treatment, and after they get the treatment, they need recovery time, and for recovery they go to some nice touristic location. They recover there, come back, do the follow-up procedure, and then they go home. And they can do it at a much cheaper rate than in the US, or because we have doctors, right? So, and out of that $9 billion, $4 billion is generated only one city, that is Chennai, right? And I see all the time that there could have been 3-4 different places in Assam which could have been that place, which could have generated $2-3 billion a year. Just treating people coming from Southeast Asia, coming from Bangladesh, coming from Myanmar, coming from Thailand, coming from Cambodia, coming from Laos, right? And that could have been developed. I mean, again, I'm going back to my example of Guwahati. In the North Guwahati, instead of building those cement factory, which is polluting the air all the time, right? It doesn't pollute. I mean, it pollutes, but then it is controllable pollutions, not like cement factory. Because when you have a cement factory, the particles that goes out in the air, I think, is more harmful than whatever bio waste you will produce from a hospital. And there is a very standard procedure how you can manage those waste without polluting the environment, right? Or from an educational institution, you don't pollute from, let's say, having a IT hub, because it's just a building, right, which has got 24 hours electricity, high-speed internet, and then people come with a laptop or a workstation, and then they work there. So how much pollution you can produce instead of a cement factory or whatever factory we have there, right? Or because of all these warehouses, you are polluting by bringing in all those big trucks, right? So those are the kind of things when that comes to my mind when I think about this relationship between education, environment, education, employment, and economic policy. Now, again, to give you some information or some stories from my own experience. So back in 1987, when I finished my higher secondary, and I initially did not think of going to Delhi for my education, because back then for arts, the results were announced very late. And I thought that I have no chance that I will be able to. Luckily that year, the results were announced in Assam the day admission started in Delhi University. And I was already in Delhi, so I could get admission in a Delhi college, right? And back then, well, AZP was in power. And again, I'm not blaming only Ahom Gana Porishod. I'm talking about, like, irrespective of our political party, I think everybody has to take the blame. So back then, what was the discussion? So they were discussing, at least I heard, that, okay, so our students, they don't get an opportunity to study in Delhi because we do not give them marks. So they cannot compete. That means they get less marks, right, in their final exam. And as a result, they cannot get into the Delhi colleges, right? So what was the solution? So let's kind of scale up, right? Let's give higher marks. So, and that happened. Nowadays, yeah, out of 600, you probably will get 595 if you are, or 500. And so you get good marks now in Assam, right? And as a result, the number of students who get admission into different places in India, different colleges in India, has gone up tremendously. But was that the solution? Or was that the problem, that because our students did not get good marks or higher marks, and that's why they could not make it to the colleges in Delhi University? It's not. The fundamental problem was different, right? It is one of the reasons. I am not denying that, but that was not the fundamental reason. What was the fundamental reason? That there is an imbalance between demand and supply. We have too many kids. We have too many students in India, right? We have too few good quality colleges. It's a demand supply problem, right? And as a result, of course, now this year in all Delhi colleges, some of the subjects cutoff is 100, right? Why? when students from Assam or West Bengal or UP go to Bangalore for higher studies, they are not treated badly, which I am sure if we start bringing in students from, let's say, southern states, I think there will be a lot of incidents where students probably will do something which they are not supposed to do. They will say, oh, you are an outsider, blah, blah, blah. And that is a very bad, very harmful rhetoric or harmful narrative that we have created over the years. When these states or these places are growing like anything, we look toward them, we go there, we get our education there, we get employed there, right? And as a result of the fact that now many students go from Assam to Bangalore or Hyderabad or to Pune or to other places in the south, and they get employed there, our people, the mothers, fathers, the uncles, aunts, the cousins, they also go to visit them, and they go to those touristic places as well. So they did not need a Priyanka Chopra to promote their tourism, because these students or these people who got an education in Bangalore and then they or Hyderabad and they got employment there, they are also the promoter of their tourism, right? So this whatever amount, huge amount that the government pays to Priyanka Chopra, that doesn't have to be paid in case of Karnataka or in case of Andhra Pradesh, because there is this natural like promoter of their tourism, right? The same way, and again, nowadays even in the US, I keep meeting those the people who got an education in Guwahati IIT, right, or their family. They say that when they got admission into Guwahati IIT, they thought that it will be such a horrible place because there is so much tension, political problems, and also it's now political problems. So how they are going to live there? But once they are in Guwahati, and then when they came to know about the place, when they came to know about the people, when they came to know about all the beautiful things that we have, they fall in love with this place. And as a result, their family visit Assam. They tell other people that Assam is a beautiful place, or Assam is a place where there are good people, very good people, right? So these are our promoter, right? So an effective economic policy that will promote our tourism would probably consider those things, right? So again, you cannot look at the economy, just one segment of the economy. You have to have a comprehensive vision which will dictate what you do at the sectoral level or what you do with education. The fact that there is no interaction between education and the sector that will employ the product of the education is a sad thing. I mean, it's not a very helpful thing. So our educational institutions do not interact with the sector. So first of all, we don't have a robust economy, right? So as I said, we don't have too many manufacturing industries. We have agriculture, and the service industry is mostly government sector. Right? And there are some in the private sector, there are some service industries, but those are mostly sales job, right? Those are not really service jobs, these are sales job, right? No company, they want to have their production hub in Assam. They generally sell their product in Assam, and in order to sell, you need people, they hire people, and these are salesmen, right? So that is the state of our own state of Assam. And that's where this education, employment, and economic policy is not connecting well. That would have helped the economy to grow and to have a very prosperous and developed society. So I think my time is up, so I will stop here. If I kind of keep going, I can keep going for a lot of for hours, because these are issues which are very close to my heart. And as a student of social science, I think I observe these things very closely. And I sometimes also am, it doesn't need, you don't need to be an economist to see some of those things, right? These are very commonsensical things. Economics anyway, it's not rocket science. It's common sense. We just kind of give some structure around the common sense, right? So that's economics. And but then most of the time, the students of economics or who have studied economics, they think it as a discipline, and as a result, this I think window that we have, we don't use it to look at the society or to look at human conditions. But I hope more and more students really get interested in their subjects and try to see the society through this very structured, very, I would say, useful framework. All right, so that helps all of us. Again, thank you everyone for attending this lecture. Thank you, Khagarijan College, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you all. And again, I'll be open to any question you may have. I may not be able to answer all your questions, but I'll try. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Such a valuable lecture. And you have so many information regarding such relevant topics. You have connected various events worldwide, actually. So we find really interesting here. I hope all the participants will be visited by the lecture. Now, sir, if you are going to start the interaction session. Professor
Yes,
Nasser,
please.
to allow
Yeah,
us,
please.
we start.
Yes, please go ahead.
Here, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. For introduction session, participants ask by writing in chat box, can directly ask Professor Nasser by themselves. Here, I also want to students may ask in Assamese as well, because Professor Nasser is very fluent in Assamese also.
অসমীয়া ইংৰাজী দুইটাতে সুধিব পাৰে, একো কথা নাই। মই অসমীয়াত কৈ বেছি ভাল পাওঁ, গতিকে সুধিব।
Any participants want to ask question to Professor Nasser directly? They can ask. Yes.
Chat boxত আছে, তাৰ পৰা লোৱা chat boxত আছে।
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. So we are going to read the evaluated on so their syllabus have been used to have passed their semester exam. In this case, how can we be assured that the student is receiving the necessary care, attention, academic support, so that their degree can be considered valid or not just for name check? Professor,
I did not hear the first part of the question. Can you repeat that, please?
Okay. If any students have generally been evaluated based on open book test, home assignments, and also their syllabus has been reduced to help them pass their semester exams. So in this case, how can we be assured that the students is receiving the necessary care, attention, and academic support, so that their degree can be considered valid? Sir.
Thank you. যিয়ে সুধিছে, আমাৰ যিটো অতিমাৰী চলি আছে, এই অতিমাৰীটোৰ এটা বিশ্বজনীন সমস্যা, সকলোৰে বহুত ক্ষতি হৈছে। গতিকে বহু ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীয়ে যিমান তেওঁলোকে পঢ়া শুনা কৰিব লাগিছিলে এটা পাঠ্যক্ৰমত, সেইখিনি হয়তো তেওঁলোকে পঢ়া শুনা কৰিব পৰা নাই। বা তেওঁলোকক যি ধৰণে পৰীক্ষা লোৱা হৈছে এতিয়া কথা হৈছে কি চাকৰি বাকৰিৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত চৰকাৰী চাকৰিৰ কথাটো নিশ্চয়কৈ চৰকাৰে কিবা এটা তেওঁলোকৰ নিয়ম নীতি উলিয়াব যে এইখিনি সময়ত যিসকলে ডিগ্ৰী পাঠ্যক্ৰম সম্পূৰ্ণ কৰিছে তেওঁলোকক চাকৰিত মকৰলৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত কি কৰিব সেইটো তেওঁলোকৰ চৰকাৰী কথা কিন্তু মই ভাবো যে সাধাৰণতে এইটো চৰকাৰী মানে পাঠ্যক্ৰমৰ কিমান অংশ কাভাৰ কৰা হৈছে নহৈছে হেতুৰ ওপৰত চাকৰিবিলাকৰ মকৰল হ'ব নালাগে মই কৈছোৱে যে এখন কলেজৰ এটা কলেজীয়া পাঠ্যক্ৰম সম্পূৰ্ণ কৰাৰ পিছত ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকলৰ কি বিলাক স্কিল বা কি বিলাক কুশলতা তেওঁলোকে আহৰণ কৰিব লাগে হেতুৰ ভিত্তিতহে হ'ব লাগে গতিকে যদি কুশলতাটো হয় যে ক্ৰিটিকেল থিংকিং মানে যেটো চিন্তা কৰাৰ প্ৰক্ৰিয়া হেতু তেওঁলোকে সাক্ষাৎকাৰেই কৰে বা পৰীক্ষাৰ জৰিয়তে কৰে কৰি যদিও তেওঁ সীমিত জ্ঞান বা পাঠ্যক্ৰম সম্পূৰ্ণ কৰিব পৰা নাই সেই জ্ঞানখিনি তেওঁ যদি সেই পৰীক্ষাটোৰ জৰিয়তে এইটো বুজি পায় যিজনে তেওঁক নিয়োগ কৰিব যে তেওঁ সেইখিনি আহৰণ কৰিব পাৰিছে মোৰ মতেৰে চাকৰিৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত বিশেষকৈ মই বেচৰকাৰী খণ্ডৰ চাকৰিৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত হেতু এটা ডাঙৰ সমস্যা হ'ব নেলাগে যে কোভিডৰ সময়ৰ ষ্টুডেন্ট গতিকে আমি তেওঁলোকক অলপ তেওঁলোকক আমি নিয়োগ নকৰো তেনেকুৱা কথা মোৰ মতেদি হ'ব নালাগে খালি এই এটা পাঠ্যক্ৰমৰ পৰা ওলাওতে যিবিলাক কুশলতা আহৰণ কৰিব লাগে বা যিখিনি জ্ঞান আহৰণ কৰিব লাগে সেইখিনি তেওঁলোকৰ আছে নে নাই হেতু তেওঁলোকে কিবা ধৰণেটো উলিয়াব হয় সাক্ষাৎকাৰ ল'ব নহলে লিখিত পৰীক্ষা ল'ব সেই পৰীক্ষাৰ জৰিয়তে মোৰ মুধেৰে ওলাই পৰিব আৰু চৰকাৰী ক্ষেত্ৰত চৰকাৰেও হেতু কৰাই উচিত বুলি মই ভাবো এতিয়া চৰকাৰকটো মই উপদেশ দিব নোৱাৰো চৰকাৰে তেওঁলোকৰ উপদেষ্টাসকলে যি ধৰণে কয় তেনেকে কৰিব বা চৰকাৰে নিজে হেতু সিদ্ধান্তটো ল'ব কিন্তু মই ভাবো চৰকাৰী চাকৰিত মকৰলৰ ক্ষেত্ৰতো তেওঁলোকে হেতুৱে কৰা উচিত যে ছাত্ৰজনে যদিও পাঠ্যক্ৰম আধৰুৱা হৈ থাকিল তেওঁলোকৰ যিখিনি কুশলতা বা তেওঁলোকৰ যিখিনি জ্ঞান আহৰণ কৰিব লাগিছিল সেই পাঠ্যক্ৰমৰ জৰিয়তে হেতু যদি কৰিব পাৰিছে তেতিয়া হলে তেওঁলোকক মকৰল আৰু তেওঁলোক যদি যোগ্য হয় সেই পদৰ কাৰণে তেওঁলোকক মকৰল কৰিব লাগে without any discrimination.
Okay. May I have a question, please? Because actually I'm a foreigner. I'm following this from the beginning.
Please,
okay.
Yes.
And
yes.
I want to ask some questions. I catch the lecture late. Sorry for that. And thank you, Selma, for invitation. But the social cost in your elaboration has been neglected. Okay. You talk about the service industry. Service industry itself, it's the consequences of the industry, normal industry. Like, let's assume that the same example you have taken and you explain, you talk about cement industry is going to pollute the air, is going to affect the people with so many diseases. I do agree with you, but this is considered to be a social cost of cement industry. Who is responsible to reduce this cost? The investor themselves, they have to establish this service industry. Now, you are in US, I think, okay? Everywhere, the service industry has become, it's a private sector responsibility, more than the government. Now, the government tried to free the service industry, okay? Because of so many things, okay? This first of all. What about social cost neglected in your elaboration of this scenario? Second thing, okay, you are talking about Delhi, it was a hub for education. I do agree with you. I'm a student of India, okay, I finished from Pune University, okay. I want to ask about something, okay. What about why Assamese people not thinking of keeping Guwahati as a hub itself, okay? Regarding the assessment of the papers, high marks and all these things, okay, let them carry on in the same way because you'll have quality education instead of quantity, okay? If I give high marks, people, they will go to Pune, as you said, go to Delhi, they will join the university there and all those things. But what the quality of the student themselves? I think Assamese student, they have the quality, okay, based on my experience, okay? Now, see, Madam Selma, she's head of department. I have so many friends now, the professors, okay? You'll not find that in other parts of India. I have so many friends from Maharashtra, so many friends from different states. but their achievement in their practical life, you cannot compare it with the Assamese student. Okay, we have to think about the quality more than quantity. Okay, let them think, let them be ambitious enough, okay, to have Guwahati as a hub for education. The third issue, I think the problem of Assam economy, okay, the enforcement of the laws and rules. Okay, and let's say that the balanced growth should be there. Assam is an agricultural society, okay, mainly. Let's transform the society to be an industrial at the same time, but everybody should take his own responsibility regarding the social cost, regarding the service industry you're talking about. I do agree totally with you, but the method we should adopt there, it should be adopted by the government. If you are an investor, you want to establish a cement industry, you have to build for us a hospital nearby, okay? Because you have to bear the social cost of that, okay? This is what I believe. Anyway, I don't like to take the time from the other friends, but thank you very much for valuable lecture. I enjoyed after a long time. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree with some of the things that but then, yeah, there are a lot of different aspects of this particular topic, and I did not cover all of them, of course. What I believe that Assam could be a hub of education and healthcare. But then my point was, people kind of focus on certain areas, or people generally do not think it through. It doesn't have a very kind of overall vision for the economy, and then there are a lot of and I'm not saying that Assamese students are not talented, or they don't have. They are good. They're doing very good. But what I am saying, that those who do not have the good fortune of going out of the state, we can have a better education system by bringing in people from outside. Now, if I can add, United States, I mean, I think nobody will argue that United States is probably is best known for its higher education system. It has happened because it is open to students and faculty from all over the world. So it is bringing in, it has created an environment where people from all over the world can come, right, congregate, and then exchange ideas. And that creates an environment where the quality of education goes up. But in Assam, with the Assam's educational institution, unfortunately, what we have observed in last 20, 30 years is that because of some political, development, I would say socio-political development, that process, back in when Guwahati University was created in 1948, well, yes, you used to have a lot of faculty and students from outside the state, but I would say that there are not that many. And as a result, that has affected the quality of education in Guwahati University. Does that mean that Guwahati University has not produced quality students? No, I'm not saying that, right? There are people, for example, look at the scientist Binoy Hoikia, who got the Santisarup Bhatnagar Award this year. He was educated in Assam. He got Santisarup Bhatnagar Award, which is probably the Nobel Prize in Science in India, right? So yes, there are instances, but we should not confuse this micro level instances with the overall thing. So if you go to any remote places, and I have been to, I regularly go to colleges and universities in the remote place because I grew up in a very rural community. Things are, I think, less, I'm not saying that there is no opportunity or there is no chance. I hope that things change in a positive way, not in a negative way. And we can create an environment. Think about right now, my family lives in a place, Mongoldo. You might know Mongoldo. It's a small town. And Mongoldo College used to bring in faculty and students from all over Assam and outside. But in last 20 years, the social narrative in that small district is such that we basically do not encourage students and faculty from outside the Dorong district, or a little more to students and faculty to come from outside, and that is very dangerous, and that is very detrimental to the educational system. So those are, like, I can give you all kinds of examples. So my point was that, so it has to be a very comprehensive vision, and then you try to do things which will help education, then economy, and also the governance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Your points are excellent. It's good to hear you speaking, giving a kind of a perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we have a question from Nisa Sigli, Sir, he writes, due to pandemic, we are having our classes in the online mode, and we are having only theory classes rather than practical ones. For that, we are having time now. So, would be a disadvantage for our future employees, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate thing. And again, I think given our constraints, it is, I mean, there is very little we could do or we can do. So what is important, I guess, what we have learned from this 1.5 years of disruption, and what we do going forward. So those students who have to study physics, who have to study biological science, who have to study botany, right? So during this time, I think it is very unfortunate that they have not been able to do all the practical classes, right? And as a result, there is learning deficit. That is very, and that will definitely put them in a disadvantage, right? But then when I think about the overall cost to the society and where do we go from here, I think it is important that those who are in the field of education, or those who are policymakers, or the universities, they should think in terms of, so how we can avoid this kind of thing, or what we can do to even partially compensate for these losses for the existing students. I think that is the question, and for me that is important. And if let's say the Guwahati University or Dibrugarh University or all these universities which run these programs, if you are thinking it through and have taken some actions, that's good. To my knowledge, has not been done much, but I think that is important. But at this point, yeah, I completely recognize, and you have that learning at a disadvantage, and that is, and that may put you in a disadvantageous position. You have to be more proactive so that you can at least compensate for. Ideal situation would be the university or the policymakers do something to compensate this learning deficit. The other would be if, and I don't know what exactly university is doing, but if nothing, then at least you should be a little bit more proactive. And nowadays, you live in a time when certain things are possible. For example, this internet is kind of a boon. I mean, when I was a college student, I think I wish I had this opportunity. I had access to the internet, so it is a source of a lot of information. And I hope you use on your own initiative. You try to get make use of this opportunity that you have. So I don't know whether I answered your question, but that is the best answer I can give. Yeah, I recognize that you have learning deficiency, and that may put you in a position of disadvantage. But I think you will have to be more proactive. You will have to learn to some extent on your own anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I hope Nisad get her answer. So one more question. It's from Dhanesh Sharma. The NEP New Education Policy 2020 envisions increasing privatization of Indian higher education. And when affiliated colleges are asked to be autonomous, and the question of funding must be addressed. So, sir, do you think that 6% contribution towards education, Education Policy 2020 is sufficient to put new government on?
Your voice was breaking, so I did not hear half of the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, 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 sir. Yes. So this question is from Dhanesh Sharma. So he asked, the new education policy 20 in privatization of Indian higher education, when affiliated are asked to be autonomous, the question of funding must be addressed. So, sir, do you think that 6% of GDP contribution towards education sector for the new education policy is sufficient to grow the huge requirement of one sector?
Okay, so I again heard only part of the question. So I think the question is about the new education policy,
Sir,
which is trying to privatize the higher education institutions, and also trying to make all the affiliated colleges autonomous. And the question, I think, is about like 6% of GDP dedicated to education will be sufficient or not. Now, GDP is not a fixed number. It kind of keeps changing. And 6%, again, will depend on what is the total GDP. So that answer, I mean, I am not in a position to answer whether that will be sufficient or not. Obviously, in a country like India, higher, I would expect, or I would like to see more money allocated to the education system. Even without the new education policy, if you look at the last few years, so the government is trying to make the educational institution to some extent, like self-financing. As a result, even higher education institutions like Indian Institute of Technology, which used to be very cheap when we were in the college, right? For example, I studied in Delhi University and I studied in Jawaharlal Nehru University. It was really, really cheap. Like, it was heavily subsidized. For one semester, I used to pay in JNU 120 rupees. And then every month, my mess dues will be about 350 to 400 rupees. So my monthly cost 800 to 900. That is my, so it used to be very cheap. And now even all these universities, they charge higher tuition fee, higher other fees, because they have to generate their own income, at least part of their income. So they are moving towards something like a system which exists in a country like US. So US, there are both private and public universities. For example, Sam Houston State University, where I teach, is a public university, meaning it's a government university. So I am an employee of the state of Texas. And now, what is how we manage our finance at Sam Houston State University? 25% of our budget, 25% of our budget comes from the government. Remaining 75% we have to generate here. So through various fees, through government, through private donations, through alumni donations, and there are other ways they generate. So at an operational level, the university is run like a company. It's a non-profit, but then it is run like a. There's some of those structures which are very similar to a corporations. But does that affect the academics? Yeah, it does not. So because there are all kinds of institutional arrangements which are very strong, and this is one thing that I also generally talk about India. So yeah, India has a lot of potentials. But then India doesn't have good institutions, because of which the economy or the society as a whole is not progressing as rapidly as it should. We basically inherited most of our institutions from the British colonists, right? And we never bothered to change them. And as a result, there is no accountability, there is no kind of responsibility, and we can always pass on our responsibility and accountability to others, and that way we can escape a lot of things, which is not very healthy. But if you look at the system that exists in some Western countries, including United States, again, I'm not saying that everything is very excellent, but I'm saying that if I look at the institutional quality here, how judiciary works, or how even legislative branch of the government works. For example, you may have come to know that there was some issue about Instagram, right? It is promoting all these videos and materials, which is kind of hurting the young girls. And as a result, now there will be a legislative inquiries. That means the CEO of Facebook will have to come to the Senate and the Congress, and he will have to testify. And if they are not satisfied, if there is proof that it is really hurting the population, then probably Facebook will be split, or there will be some punitive actions. So that those kind of things does not happen in these corporations or corporate bodies. They get they are not most of the time they are not accountable, right? And that creates a problem. Same applies to the universities as well. So yeah, I mean, in principle, I would say it probably will not be a bad thing, but seeing education system in different countries, but then we really have to be careful. We have to develop, or we have to really enhance the quality of our institutional arrangement. And when I say institutional arrangements, the laws, regulations, etc., etc. Then I don't, well, as you probably know, some of the best universities in the world are actually private, right? So Harvard University is a private university. Stanford University is a private university. These are private universities, and they are doing excellent work. They do things which is at the forefront of it's basically progressing the human civilization. It is contributing to the progression of the human civilization. And so I don't think private is necessarily bad, but then if you are not careful, things may go, things may not go as expected. So again, institution is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all the participants for your participation. We are putting our questions and session back. Now, I would like Balamani, please mute yourself. Balamani, please mute yourself. Now, Balamani, please mute yourself. Now, I would like to request Ms. Zarna Marang, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Khagarijan College, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to Zarna Marang. Yes, Marang.
Good evening to one and all present here. I, Jharna Moran, on behalf of Khagarijan College, would like to extend my heartfelt thanks and regards to Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath sir for sharing his knowledge on various levels of education system, its existing scenario in India, its relations between employment and various economic policies. We hope our participants will be benefited by your valuable lecture. It was indeed an honor to have you with us. Special thanks to Principal Dr. Ramesh Nath sir, Khagarijan College, for providing his ever-untiring effort, guidance, encouragement, and immense support. I extend my thanks to Umi Salma ma'am, Head of the Department of Economics of Khagarijan College, as well as coordinator of this webinar, for taking the initiative in organizing this event. I also thank to Dr. Ramesh Komi sir, coordinator of IQAC of Khagarijan College, for his unending support and cooperation. I'd also like to offer my thanks to Balladev Sharma, Secretary of Sadau Asom Gramya Puthibharal Santha, Nagaon, for his support. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Rupali Talukdar, Assistant Professor of Economics Department, for smooth moderation of this webinar. Wholeheartedly, I hereby thank our respected and beloved participants for their active involvement. Last but not the least, heartfelt gratitude to Jiraj Ghosh from Computer Science Department of Khagarijan College for his untiring support and technical assistance in making this webinar a grand success. Once again, thank you all. Thank you. Over to Rupali.
Thank you. Thank you, Jharna Moran. Our feedback link will be available in the WhatsApp group very shortly. Participants will get e-certificate after completion of the feedback. So I request all the participants to fill up the feedback form. That link is available, will be available very shortly in the WhatsApp group. So we reach the end of this beautiful session, sir. Now I declare this session is over here. Hope to see you again, sir. Hope to see you all. Thank you so much, Professor Hiranya Kumar Nath, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
sir.
Hiranya.
Yeah.
বহুত ধুনীয়া লাগিলে।
Thank you, sir.
বহুত ধুনীয়া।
নমস্কাৰ। Thank you. Thank you. ভাল
Hi.
লাগিলে। ভাল
বহুত
লাগিলে।
ভাল লাগিল, sir.
আকৌ লগ পাম।
আপোনাৰ সময় হলে আৰু এটা অকমান বেলেগ ধৰণৰ মানে ফৰেন স্কলাৰশ্বিপ বা কেনেধৰণে আমাৰ ল'ৰা ছোৱালীবিলাক কেনেকে যাব লাগে, কি কৰিব লাগে, কেনেকুৱা অকমান যদি আপোনাৰ সময় হয়, নেক্সট আমি এটা সেশন কৰিম যদি আপোনাৰ সময় হয়।
ঠিক আছে, মই কৰিম বাৰু। এই মেবি এইটো সেমিষ্টাৰ যাওক ন, অহা সেমিষ্টাৰত কোনোবা এটা সময় মোক এবাৰ মানে মনত পেলাই দিলে হ'ল, তেতিয়া কৰিব পাৰিম।
আৰু লগতে স্যাৰ মানে কি ইন্টাৰেকশন প্ৰগ্ৰাম এনেকুৱা যে হয়, ষ্টুডেন্টছে মানে খুব ভাল পাব আপোনাৰ লগত কথা পাতি, মানে তেনেকুৱা
নাই
ধৰণৰ প্ৰগ্ৰাম
মুখামুখিকে কথা পাতিব পাৰিলে বেছি ভাল ল'ৰা ছোৱালীৰ লগত। তেতিয়া
স্যাৰ নিশ্চয় আপুনি যেতিয়া আহিব অসমলৈ তেতিয়া আমি ইনভাইট কৰিম, আপুনি নিশ্চয় আমাৰ ইনভাইটেশনটো ৰক্ষা কৰিব। হয় স্যাৰ, আজি মানে এই মোৰ ফ্ৰেণ্ডছ বহুতক পাইছো, এতিয়া মই দেখি আছো মুকুট আছে, আৰু স্যাৰ অথনি যে আপোনাৰ কোৱেশ্চন কৰিছিলে সিদ্দিক, তেওঁ সুদানৰ হয়। Actually, he is my friend of Pune University. Yeah. একেলগে পঢ়িছিলো পুনে ইউনিভাৰ্চিটি। হয়।
নাই
ঠিক আছে,
ভাল মানে কথাখিনি, কিন্তু আটাইবিলাক কথা তেনেকে মানে ধৰক হেৰি কৰিব নোৱাৰিতো। ঠিকেই কৈছে তেওঁ কথাখিনি। এটা বেলেগ এটা পাৰ্সপেক্টিভ পোৱা যায় বাহিৰৰ মানুহে হেৰি কৰে।
ঠিকে আছে, আটাইখিনিলৈ মোৰ নমস্কাৰ থাকিল স্যাৰ। হয়, লগ পাম পিছত।
ধন্যবাদ, আকৌ লগ পাম। ঠিক আছে।
ঠিক আছে স্যার। Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.